Great job. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. You can see that I am not in my normal space. I do have on my seatbelt. Um, I have on my seatbelt. I'm in a car, but we are in a parking lot, and we are in the parking lot of a hotel because we are traveling to check out a property. So this is a property that we have owned for about 3.5, maybe 4. I think we're coming up on our fourth year in the fall. And this has been the biggest challenge. This particular property, we've had to go through a couple of property managers. Um, it's just, it just feels like there's always some sort of challenge. So today, in my Believe It or Not, I'm actually going to tell you things that have happened at this property. So I don't know, get your bowl of popcorn and get ready because let me tell you, it just never stops at this place. So, so we've had a lot of people that have left, but I'm going to kind of tell you some of the things that have happened, even though they're still not there anymore. But one of them was we had two guys that worked construction, and so they would park their trucks and their work trucks in the parking lot. Well, that already created a problem because we didn't really have enough parking spaces for everyone to take up two. And then they would sometimes kind of split the difference. And so they actually were in three. But on the weekends, they loved to get together and grill, like by their trucks and drink beer and play really loud music, which is fine for those that were invited. But the people that live there that weren't invited to the barbecue were not happy campers. And they were most upset because every weekend there was a big party going on, lots of barbecuing, lots of drinking. And, sometimes things don't always turn out the best when that happens. Then we had another guy who, now I do want to tell you that this particular property is a tax credit property. And one of the things that we do is, our whole philosophy is from complex to community. So we're always trying to create a community. And one of the things that we do at this particular apartments is we accept refugees. And so we work with the Catholic charities and we work with Volunteers of America. I think those are the only two right now that we're working with. And so what happens is people are coming from other countries and we're trying to eliminate them having to come to America, stay in a hotel for a week, and then go to an apartment. So we're trying to do it so that they can go directly from, the airplane lands, and then they're taken to their apartment. And it's been really working out. People donate, they make those donations, they're household donations. And it's from those household donations that we're able to furnish the apartments for them. We don't advertise them as rented apartments because that means as furnished apartments because we really don't furnish them. But when someone shows up and they just have a suitcase or they just have a garbage bag that has their things in it, they don't have what they need. And so we try really hard to furnish those units for them. Well, I was there and I was a mother and son, and they spoke Russian. I'm not going to say they're from Russia because that would be an assumption. I don't know where they were from, but I do know they spoke Russian. So draw whatever conclusion you want. But there are other countries besides Russia that speak Russian. And their advocate happened to be there, which was such a blessing because I was able to talk to them with the advocate because I personally do not speak Russian. And this was about 3 years ago. I don't think we had that translate yet on our phone. Really don't. And so, I was talking with them about they had lived there for 3 months, and I asked them, how they were liking the apartment. Were they adjusting? Did they enjoy, the one son was in school. Was he enjoying school? And so we're having this conversation. And then at the end, I said, is there anything that I can help you with? Now, keep in mind, I never tell residents I'm an owner. I always say I'm with management. Write that down in your brain. Don't ever tell residents that you're an owner. It just really opens a big can of worms. And it also can get us into some fair housing issues. And I'll talk about that in just a minute. And so I just always say, like, I'm with the office or I'm with management, one of the two. So, so I'm there and I said, well, is there anything that, would make your stay more comfortable? Is there anything that we can do for you? And the mom started talking with the advocate and was a little bit animated. And I was like doing signs like washing her hair. I don't know. When someone's talking and they talk with their hands, but you don't speak the language, it's like, I don't know what they're saying. I'm trying to figure out, like, what is she saying? And it turns out that for 3 months, they had not had hot water. They had the pilot light in their gas hot water heater had gone out, but they didn't know like that they could go to the office and say, I don't have hot water, because they were grateful they had water, but they were just saying that it was very inconvenient because they had to heat water in order to wash their hair and to, you know, so I was like, oh my goodness. So then I had to have a little talk with them about any time that there's an issue, you need to go to the office. You don't need to worry or think about, is this okay? Or am I allowed? I think that's part of it, just coming from other countries. They don't know, like, am I allowed to complain? And I think that's just something that as Americans, we just know it's our right. And sometimes I think we abuse it a little bit and we complain a little too much, but they just didn't know that they could say, hey, this isn't working out very good. And we've had some incidents with having refugees there. We had a woman that liked to dry her clothes in the sun. And there are no clotheslines and there are no backyards. But laying them on the grass seemed like a really good alternative. And so she would spread out all of their laundry on the grass, which is it's got beautiful grass. But nobody wants to look at someone's underwear and their clothes that are out on the grass. So then we had to explain, you can't, you have to use the dryer. Or you can, buy a drying rack at like Home Depot and dry them in your apartment, but you can't dry them on the grass. Then we had another guy who had a car, which was kind of unusual, but he wanted to park in the shade, and so there wasn't immediate shade in the parking lot, so he jumped the curb and pulled his car up under a tree, like a tree that is like a landscaping tree on the complex. Just like, no, you cannot. You have to park in the parking lot like that. It's there. That's what the lines mean. You have to park between the lines. And so it was just so interesting, some of the things that we've had to kind of go. And then the other is we've had to teach them about refrigeration. So a lot of people are coming from the Middle East and they don't have refrigeration. And so they're not used to putting their food away, and certainly not used to having like tinfoil and saran wrap and things like that. So that has been a huge, huge educational program for us where we teach them about how to not have roaches because they are okay. They're used to that, but they're not. And let me tell you, these particular ones, they're fourplexes. So there's four units in each building. And so if one person has roaches, guess what? Everybody's got roaches. And then you have to go in and, clean it and then bomb everyone's. And so we've just had a lot of education that we've been doing, teaching them about, some of the things that are norms to us, like putting our clothes in the dryer and parking in the parking lot and putting saran wrap over our food. But it's just not normal to them. And so that's been a real education. But I feel like that really feeds into our complex to community because now they know each other. that, and a lot of them do rely on helping each other to kind of, hey, you can't put your laundry. It's better to hear it from your neighbor than it is to hear it from the office. And so they've been helping, kind of helping each other out, over the years of what to do. But we have to be really careful. Like when you go, I want to talk just a minute about fair housing because we had some Hispanic that lived at the complex, and one of the owners spoke Spanish. And just not really knowing one way or the other, actually gave her phone number to some of the residents. So, because they too are in a learning curve, some of them have to come up from Mexico. And so she's like, well, here's my phone number. You can call me. Well, you cannot do that. So I want all of you to know that when you're an owner, unless you're going to post your personal phone number in the leasing office with a notice that says, hey, if you ever need anything, give me a call. Um, that that is not going to work um, because you violate fair housing. Lord, this says,
It's because you spilled your drink inside your phone. So like charged because it's
oh gosh. Well, I'll talk fast because who knows how much time I have left.
We all heard that.
Oh, let me tell you, you guys, I'm a hot mess. I really am. It's been a week, it's been a month. But anyway,
Yeah.
so so it's just really important that you guys remember that when you're doing due diligence, when you're doing site visits, because this one we're just here to do site visits. But when you do that, it's really important that you just say you're with the office or with the management. And if they want a phone number, you give them the office's phone number. You don't, give them your personal number because we almost got into some trouble with it. We didn't. We were able to take care of it, but it could have been a big issue. Then the other thing I want to tell you guys about, this is my last story with this particular complex, is we have a variety of ages. So we live across the street from an elementary school, which if you think about it is super good because here we have these refugees come in. It's a family. Usually the dad goes to work and then, but they only have one car. And so the dad's able to take the car, and then the mom literally walks the children across the street to the school. And then about 2 blocks away is the middle school. So they can also walk to the middle school. So for that, it's been really good that we're able to help them kind of keep the lifestyle that they were used to, where the dad would go to work and the mom would take care of the kids. And the way that it's set up, they're able to do that. But we do have some retired people that live there. And then we have just, regular people that live there. So I mean, it's a definitely, there's just all kinds of people there. Um, and so, but we've had some things that have been rather interesting. So we had this woman who was an elderly woman who was like, lived there. She was on Social Security and she also got a pension. And the reason I know all this is she was retired from the military. Okay. So I don't know how much she made or whatever, but she was retired military, but she was old enough to get Social Security and to get her retirement from the military. And she really kept to herself. She had lived there for several years. And I think she was about 70 that we figured out that was about her age. So one day a guy is at her complex, and you're allowed to have visitors. I mean, for heaven's sakes, and you're allowed to have family come visit. But the girl in the office just kind of took note. It was a younger guy. He was more like in his 40s. And he was like, wonder what he's doing there. Just kind of one of those moments. And so she started watching, and a week went by, and he was still coming and going to the apartment. And then the second week came. And so she, had told me that she was going to go talk to her and find out, like, who was the guy. Because if he's going to stay there, there's no rule that he can't stay there. But in order to stay there, he needs to be on the lease because, we have policies like you can't have a felony. You can't live in the complex and have a felony. And we want to make sure we get his driver's license and his identification. And so we know who he is and what have you. So, so she had told me that that week she was going to get a hold of the lady. Well, before she could get over there, we were on the news because it turns out that this man was a pen pal with this guy in prison. So he was in prison. And so they wrote and they were pen pals for a couple of years. And then she went down to the prison and married him while he was still in prison. And then he got out like a year or so later. So this was like this long, and no one in the complex knew anything about. It's not that it was a double life, but she was, I guess, very, very private, and no one knew that she had a pen pal that was in prison, which is totally fine. And then she married him, which is totally fine. But guess what? He can't live there because he's in prison. He's from prison. He has a felon. He's a felony. So, but before our on-site could get over there to kind of talk to them about it, he had been there, it had been 2 weeks. And the next thing we know, now remember, she's retired military. Okay. She shot him. He had been there 2 weeks. I don't know if he said something that she didn't like. I don't know if he was stealing money. We have no idea, but
Oh my gosh.
she shot him in the stomach, and she didn't kill him. She shot him in the stomach, which is a horrible place to get shot, but she shot him in the stomach and then got in her car and drove away. And then, so now the police gets called because there's been shots fired. They come in. Here's this guy. He's laying on the floor, bleeding out of his stomach. He's just gotten out of prison 2 weeks ago. And he's like, yeah, my wife shot me. And of course, the officers are like, your wife shot you? And then,
He said,
he's
oh,
like,
and she's 70.
yes, yes. He's like 40 years old and she's like 70 years old. So I don't remember where she drove. She didn't drive very far, but they were able to go and apprehend her. But guess what? She is
What?
now in prison for attempted murder. I mean,
You know what, Cindy? I believe this hook, line, and sinker because I don't think you can make that up. That's crazy.
it is so
Oh my
crazy.
gosh.
And then,
Uh,
and then of course we're thinking, I mean, he couldn't keep the apartment because he was a felon. So they had to, release the apartment because she is now in prison. But I guess she doesn't have to worry about paying rent or having meals. I don't know. And I don't even know how long she's going to be in there, but she tried to kill him.
oh
So
my God. Now we're going to pay her rent because we're paying our taxes. We're going to pay her meals. That's insane.
isn't that crazy?
Yes.
It is. It is very, very crazy. Yeah. We've had a couple of sad things. We did have a guy that, well, he did an OD, but he was on his porch and was doing drugs, and I guess overdosed, but it didn't kill him. Like, but they were able to get the police there. But I mean, he got evicted. You can't live there and do drugs. I mean, that's
Yeah.
not going to work. Um, then we had a guy. Now, remember, I told you that people, they're from different countries and they have different thoughts and the way things are. So I have walked into so many. When you first walk into the apartment, you walk into the kitchen area and there's a dining room to the left. And then you go straight forward and then there's the living room. And then you go left or right and there's a bedroom, if it's a 1 bedroom or 2 bedroom, depending. Okay. So I've walked into a kitchen that instead of having a dining room, they've had their couch and their TV and everything right there. Like that is their little living room. And the living room is their bedroom. Like they have this bed set up with dressers but I don't know if they know, like, hey, you really could use another room for the bedroom, and this you could have your TV and your couch. So I don't know. I've just seen some very weird configurations of what people have done, and I don't know. I thought, well, the one guy, he lived by himself, and so it made sense that he had his couch and his TV right adjacent to his kitchen where his dining room would be, because that made him closer to the food, I guess. So, but yeah, it's been really interesting. So we're here for 4 days. We're gonna do some audits and walk some units. So I might have some things to add next month when it's
May the
week
force
3.
be with you. Oh my goodness.
When we talk about believe it or not, because it's crazy. The so let me check my time, and I'm not out of battery. I do have one more guy. Bless his heart. He was in the kitchen cooking. Well, first off, the people that come from Mexico cook on the coil burners. So instead of, how we have like a tortilla pan, I have a cast iron tortilla pan that actually one of my sons wants in his inheritance. I got to get that written in the will because he wants that tortilla pan. But most people, have some sort of pan that they cook them on, but they put them right on the coils, and they're electric, and it burns the coil
Oh,
to replace the coils. And we had to start charging them for it because it's like, we can't afford to keep going out and buying coils because you're not listening to us. The first time we don't charge them, we just tell them, hey, you have to use a pan, and try and find a pan to show them this is what you need to use, in order to cook your tortillas. But there was a guy and he was cooking in his kitchen, and he was cooking with grease. I don't know what he did, but he went into another room. Like, I don't know if he went into the bedroom or into the bathroom, but he forgot he was cooking something with grease. And so he caught his kitchen on fire. And thankfully, we have fire extinguishers. We were able to get the fire put out, and it only disrupted his kitchen, believe it or not. Believe it or not. And so rather than trying, because it's his fault, right? Because he was cooking with grease. Now, if something happens in an apartment and we as the owners, it's something that we need to take care of, we will put a resident in a hotel, because it's something that we have forgotten to do, or something that wasn't done on time or done correctly, then we would pay for them to go to a hotel. Well, this was him. He was just cooking with grease. I don't even know what he was cooking. And so he says, I don't want to go. I don't want to go to a hotel. I can't really go to afford to go to a hotel. I've already paid my rent. I'm just going to live here while you guys fix it. And so he lived in the apartment, and people came in every day working on replacing, different appliances and cupboards. And I don't know. I don't know what he used for his kitchen. I don't know what he used for his bedroom. But yeah, he stayed because he didn't want to leave. So all these are true stories, swear across my heart. And they're all at one complex.
oh
And
my goodness.
we own 8. So you got a few more months of some interesting stories. So
We love it.
I hope you guys learned a few things. Please remember about fair housing. Please remember about saying that you're with the office. Those are really important things that are going to help you, that won't give you any grief in the end. So, well, I am going to go check in, and then I'm going to try and find some food, because the last time I ate was 7 o'clock this morning. So,
Oh,
yeah, need to find some food. So we'll talk with you guys later. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
thank you, Cindy. Bye.
Bye.